I think it was the day before my 26th birthday, and I started it while staying at my parents' house in Atlanta, where I was back home for a month before moving to Berlin to kind of start pursuing writing full time. And back in my childhood bedroom, I was thinking a lot about the kind of front half of my 20s and really like how different my life looked from, I think, the life that my parents had envisioned for me. I had also recently lost a good friend to an opiate OD, and was kind of in the throes of grief during that time. And I sat down and wrote like 10 pages of material that's actually no longer in the novel, but was really just kind of like a character sketch of this protagonist, Smith, who, like me, lived this life kind of split between worlds, the sort of Southern Black bourgeoisie background of his parents, and the kind of New York downtown club scene. And then I put it away for years and worked on a different novel. And it was only once I was in grad school at my MFA at NYU and kind of like revisiting these pages that I realized that there was more there. And I continued writing, and as I continued writing, I think I really zeroed in on the subject of like Black respectability politics and addiction. And kind of, addiction as a means to look at how kind of Black respectability politics um, can force a person to perform themselves, can like act as a hindrance to like knowing oneself, and like had been this really like massive kind of force throughout my life and throughout my upbringing. And yeah, so that was kind of the seed of the idea. The book follows this character, Smith, who's a Black gay 20 something. And in the wake of an arrest for cocaine possession in the Hamptons, he has to confront his relationship to race, class, addiction, and grief in the aftermath of his best friend's death. So it's really a novel kind of about what it means to be like upwardly mobile but downwardly spiraling.
And yeah, I mean, in terms of, would you talk about some of the circumstance here with that helps set the spiral up? Um,
Yeah, yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, so I'm the kind of like backstory to like the setup to the arrest is that his best friend and roommate has just died of an apparent OD, and it's getting kind of relentlessly covered in the media, which is obviously creating a kind of like psychic tension and a desire to escape for the character Smith. And as he's trying to kind of escape his like present circumstances, he runs into trouble with law enforcement and is kind of forced to look directly at at his life and at his choices. I actually, before I started kind of in earnest on this novel, I'd written a short story um, called Smith that basically followed the same character through like a day. And I think it was just like a kind of exercise in like trying out this voice, which is like a close person third, um, kind of in the consciousness of Smith. Um, and I think I wanted to do that. I mean, I think for a bunch of reasons. Like the other novel that I had been working on, um, which was set in Berlin, like I had a lot less biographically in common with that narrator or that protagonist. And so I think it felt like more interesting to me to like inhabit the first person for that book. And then when I was moving over to this project, um, first of all, I just like wanted a new challenge. I wanted like the voice to feel different. Um, but also, I mean, as you noted, like the protagonist has a lot biographically in common with me. And I think it then felt more interesting to me to like look at the kind of what he knows, but also like the edges of essentially what he doesn't know, what information other people have access to that he doesn't, um, the ways in which he can't quite see himself clearly. Um, And so like a third person, even like a close third, felt just like a better vantage point to kind of explore that from, like getting this kind of like roving lens, where we're looking at Smith, but we're also looking at these other characters. And then I mean the question of like temporality and tense. Yeah, a couple times, I mean, like my agents or other people kind of asked why not start the book with Elle's death, or even have that in the kind of like present timeline of the book rather than what it is now, which is that it kind of precedes the opening of the book and we only see that character in flashback. And I mean, I really wanted the whole novel to feel almost like the kind of the come down after a party. Like that is kind of that is like the place in his life that Smith is. And so like I wasn't as interested in beginning with an event that maybe felt almost like of higher drama or like really, really high kind of emotional stakes. I was interested in seeing their relationship through a kind of like nostalgia and retrospect. Yeah, and so I decided to kind of structure it with these like court dates, where it's a three act structure in the book, and we have three court dates. And yeah, those are kind of like what bookend the actual like structure of the novel. With the kind of court like narrative or plot line, I mean, in this book, we see three generations of Smith's family. We get his grandmother, and there's like a flashback to kind of her childhood escaping basically like racial terror in the Deep South. We see his parents, who are kind of members of like the Black professional class in Atlanta, and then we see Smith. And I mean, part of what I wanted to convey was like how generations of sort of upward mobility can be undone in a single night. At least for people in the kind of precarious position that like the Black upper middle class kind of is, where you're at this juncture where you have a degree of like class privilege that insulates you, but also a ton of like racial projections that are being placed upon you at all times. And there's a kind of, I think, self-consciousness and anxiety to that kind of intersection or that milieu. And so with the like court of it all and the arrest, yeah, like that was a means to look at that like precarity. That and like we see that in all of those court scenes where those are so about performance. Like they're almost these like theaters into which like Smith and his father are, trying to perform a certain version of themselves at being kind of like respectable, like I say, like respectable Negroes, um, in a way, like trying to like battle all of the kind of cultural baggage that is like being placed on them as just like Black men kind of caught up in the criminal justice system. Um, yeah, and so the kind of symbolism in those scenes is so about image and performance. And as a whole, I wanted that narrative to yeah, speak to the kind of precariousness of that particular position.